They sat me at the end of the table, closest to the kitchen door, where steam and orders collided, forks scraping porcelain. I heard them laugh, that easy, oily sound, and one voice cut through with a raised glass. "Well, at least she's here now scrubbing floors instead of files." I didn't answer. I watched candlelight tremble against a cracked wine glass, the red inside catching every line like blood on broken skin. I chewed silence. My fork hit the plate harder than I meant. No one looked my way. No one spoke of the nights I stayed up drafting their appeals, the hours in court when my voice held for them. Nothing. Just dull, polite chewing. Until the door swung open, cold air rushing in, and a man I didn't know blinked at me hard. His eyes widened in disbelief. His voice broke the hush. "Ma'am, Governor." The word dropped like glass. Forks froze. Chairs creaked. No one laughed. Before I share my story, I want to know you're here with me. Just say hi in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. And if this story moves something in you, consider subscribing. The chair they gave me was closest to the kitchen door, draft hitting the side of my leg every time it swung open, bringing the smell of old oil and something burnt. Around the table, talk rose and fell in practiced waves, silverware chiming polite applause. I watched the overhead chandelier spill its yellow light in blurred circles on white plates, leaving half of my face in glow and half swallowed in shadow, like they hadn't finished painting me in. Someone cleared their throat down the table. I lifted my eyes in time to catch them, looking my way, polite, measured, tilting their glass just enough to acknowledge I was there, before turning back to safer conversations. "Glad you made it," someone said with that warm hush you use for unwanted guests. I nodded. My fingers brushed the stem of my glass, catching a hairline crack in the crystal. A cousin leaned in across someone else to talk, voice bright, asking about work, but not mine. I watched them laugh at his jokes, touching his arm, complimenting his new promotion. He pretended to deflect, grinning, chin tucked modestly. Their mother's perfume drifted over. That old floral bite that used to mean comfort, now cloying and stale. When I tried to answer something, just to be part of it, a question about the weather cut me off, their eyes already moving past me to the other end of the table. My fork rested beside my plate. I let my fingers wrap around it, careful not to squeeze, watching the tines catch the light. Beyond the table, the family photo wall sat heavy, frames carefully spaced, catching the same sallow glow, all of them looking out proud and full. I wasn't any of them. My chair scraped the tile when I shifted, the sound loud in my own ears. At the far end, they toasted him again, the golden one, the one who'd done well. Applause traveled like a wave. I sat with my glass in hand, eyes on the condensation slipping toward my wrist, feeling the chill sink in. I didn't say anything. The crack in the glass caught the light, and from somewhere behind the door, a dish fell in the kitchen with a clean, sharp sound. The chair they offered me faced half the room, half the window, angled just enough that the draft from the frame crept under my collar. They spoke around me in layered conversations, sentences drifting like smoke, no one noticing the empty space my words might have filled. I watched them arrange the plates just so, polished silver catching the candlelight in warm arcs. On the wall behind them hung the big family photo, new last year, and I searched it without blinking. They'd shifted everyone tighter, closer, to make the gap where I'd been vanish. "June," someone tried, voice cautious, as if testing if it still fit. They didn't wait for an answer before turning back to pour wine, the liquid hitting the glass with a soft weight that felt louder than anything I could have said. I folded my napkin, refolded it again, watched the crease line sharpen, then fade. There was a dish at the center of the table that had always been mine to bring, the old recipe handed down quiet as breath. But now it was something glossy in store packaging. Label turned out to the room like a grin. When I reached for it, someone's hand gently guided it aside. "Oh, no need, Marjorie made that," they said, without meeting my eyes. Further down, they talked about the graduation, clinking forks, praising how well he'd done. I remembered the late nights, flashcards, the worry. But they didn't. They talked like it had always been easy, as if I'd never sat at that same table drilling questions until my voice cracked. The memory stayed behind my teeth, pressing. Sorry, June, right? Someone mumbled when I moved to pass a dish. I nodded, slow. Their fingers brushed mine like contact with something that might sting. I let my hand fall back to my lap. The napkin felt damp where I gripped it. I tried to offer a line, something small to join them, but the words caught. When another voice rose and cut it clean. Laughter spread, pushing my quiet aside. I let the breath slip out and picked up my glass, touching it to my lip, but not drinking. The cold from the window leaned in at my side, trailing along my ribs. A spoon scraped against porcelain. Metal on ceramic, deliberate but not careful. The candle near me burned lower than the rest, guttering at its edges, leaving my corner dim. I set my glass down and moved it half an inch so the wet ring wouldn't show. No one saw. At the far end, someone shifted in their seat, chair leg stuffing tile, slow enough to be heard but not enough to matter. I watched the movement, blinked once, and looked away. They guided Owen to the center spot, where the light fell softest, brushing his shoulders in warm gold. The family leaned forward in their chairs, eyes catching the gleam off crystal, as they raised their glasses in near-perfect unison. Someone laughed too loud at first, then corrected it to something polite. Owen really outdid himself, they said, voice buoyant. We should thank Owen for making this happen. The name hit twice, 3 times, as if the sound itself added weight to his presence. I watched the glow ripple across their faces, settling on him like they'd known all along he belonged there. Aunt Marian's fingers tapped the table, rhythmic with anticipation before she began the toast. To Owen, really. I don't know where we'd be without him tonight. Her words were met with nods, genuine smiles. They turned their heads in perfect timing, the collective glance shifting and locking, fixing him in place like a photo already framed. My seat angled me toward them, but left me half-shadowed, the chair too far from the heart of the table to feel its heat. I let my eyes follow the flicker of the candle, watching the reflection dance across his glass. Mine sitting untouched. Someone cleared their throat and added, I didn't even know we could do it that way until Owen suggested it. And they laughed again, softer, intimate. The kind you give when you really mean it. The idea wasn't new, not really, but no one mentioned that. Their shoulders tilted in unison toward him, conversation folding around his words with practiced ease. No one looked my way until a single voice, hesitant, clipped at the edge, said, You're all right there, Elsie? I heard my name like an afterthought, tossed in to check a box, cold and careful. I nodded without sound. My fingers circled the stem of my glass. I felt the ridges of the cut pattern dig in, but didn't lift it. My mouth opened to answer something, anything, but the words died in the hollow of my throat. I swallowed instead, the movement dry, and let my gaze slip to the window. There I caught us both in reflection. Owen stood clean and tall, the light wrapping him so the edges of his shape were crisp on the glass. Mine blurred behind, double exposed and thinning toward nothing. Someone began clapping again, the sound deliberate, breaking the quiet like a stone dropped in water. It spread out in rings, catching others until the table throbbed with it. I didn't join in. I let my palms rest on the linen, flexing once, twice, the fabric shifting under my nails. The laughter curled around the ceiling beams and fell back muted, settling like dust. At the edge of my vision, his silhouette cast long against the wall, clear and sure. Mine stayed hunched, broken by chairbacks and the flicker of low-burning candles. I cleared my throat once, low enough that no one turned, fingers grazing the rim of my glass, tilting it a fraction just to watch the candlelight shiver through the pale liquid. My voice started quiet, a thread, barely enough to catch air. I tried again, leaning forward, elbow soft on the table's edge. There was this one time, I began slow, cautious, my eyes lifting to find someone, anyone. Looking back, searching for the smallest flicker of invitation to keep going. My other hand spread open on the linen, flattening a wrinkle with deliberate care, as if the right gesture could steady my tongue. I managed a few words more, careful, measured, my mouth testing syllables like they might break. The memory tasted old, metallic. It was late. I remember the way the porch light hit. I swallowed, voice catching, but it was there, waiting. A tiny hope curling warm in my chest. I let my eyes settle on Owen, angled just enough to see him nod or smile. Anything. But then the laugh came, full and bright, and sudden. Not cruel but careless, splitting my words apart mid-breath. Someone's glass knocked too hard against another, a clink that carried across the table, cutting into the hush I'd tried to make. Owen! Truly, you're incredible, Owen. The name rang once, twice, sweet and sure, an easy hook for everyone to catch. They repeated it with fondness, the syllables warm in their mouths, spilling into new stories that twisted toward him like vines finding light. My voice didn't even have time to die properly. It just stopped. I let my lips stay parted for a moment longer before closing them, teeth resting against the inside of my cheek. I felt the hush around me turn thin, brittle, my fingers sliding back to grip the glass again, but not lifting it. The candle nearest me sputtered once, its wick drowning in wax, leaving my face edged in shadow while theirs stayed lit. I let my eyes drop to the table, tracing the folded corner of a napkin, smoothing it flat, over and over with the pad of my thumb. Breath slipped from me in slow release, the kind you hope no one hears. When I looked up again, their shoulders had already turned, angled toward Owen. The space between us filled with chatter I couldn't quite parse. I straightened my back carefully, spine pressing to the chair, moving just enough to feel the distance grow. No one interrupted me anymore. There wasn't anything left to interrupt. My fingers let go of the glass to rest flat on the cloth, palm warming a ring of condensation until it blurred at the edges. At the very end, I let my gaze drift to the side where a small photo frame sat just off-center on the sideboard. Someone must have bumped it earlier. It leaned now, crooked, catching the candlelight wrong, half glare and half shadow across the smiling faces I didn't try to name. They kept saying Owen's name, not loud but clear enough to catch the edges of the room, the way a candle flickers before settling. Owen really planned that so well, someone repeated, voice like poured syrup, warm and unbroken. Another lifted a glass, light catching on the rim, calling, "To Owen?" Again, the words ringing over silver and glass. Laughter peeled away softly, not harsh but easy, finding corners I didn't sit in. The overhead light fell square on him, left me half lit, half sunk into the edge of the table. I watched them lean in, their shoulders pressing, shadows merging behind them on the wall, while mine laid behind, fainter. My fingers rested on the stem of my glass, twisting it just enough to see the warped reflection of a face I didn't recognize. I let it hover near my mouth, feeling the chill kiss my lip, then set it down without drinking. It was the sound of cloth on wood that seemed loudest, that slow hush as I adjusted my napkin, smoothing it flat even after the wrinkle had given up. I thought of another dinner once. The shape of the light then, how it hit differently, how maybe it had always been the same and I hadn't seen. Like something I almost remembered, but it fell apart halfway there. Like there might have been a time but the rest slipped, too light to hold. I watched Owen's hand sweep out, gathering them in with that small practiced circle, and they followed, eyes bright, chins tilted, laughing in sync. My own hand rested, still, pressing the napkin down just so. Fingers flexed, then relaxed, the lines disappearing in the cloth. Breath moved slow through me, catching once near my throat before finding its way out. My shoulder lowered without me telling it to, spine easing back into the chair as if to make less space. I didn't try to fill the quiet. There was a moment I felt my mouth start to open, no sound waiting behind it. Vivitha, Toi. But nothing settled enough to finish. My gaze fell, catching the glint of the chandelier where it bounced low onto the floor. All that careful light pulled in places I wasn't. It left a shape there, half shadow and half glow. No clear line to hold. I let my eyes blur, the focus gone, watching the spill of brightness break against the legs of chairs, against the edge of the table, not really touching me at all. They moved slow around Owen, hands arranging silver just so. The napkin fold crisp, a slight turn of the wrist to straighten the flowers at center. The overhead light burned softer above him, warm and steady, throwing a clean glow over the glassware. Someone's voice drifted out, calling thanks with his name on it twice, the syllables round and sure, catching on the air like it belonged there. A camera clicked once, again, its flash bending toward that side of the table, leaving the edges where I sat half lit, pale as old paper. My fingers found the rim of my glass, turned it slow, the base leaving a dark ring that dried before I could notice. I watched him lift a pitcher with both hands, pour careful wipe a stray bead before it fell. A memory scratched behind my eyes. Something about that motion, that slow patience, the hush that used to settle when it was done right, like the way a story might begin, but never find its end. I blinked once, twice, vision slipping behind the shine of the glass. Someone said thanks again, voice a touch too loud, but friendly, easy. Then caught themselves and added, wrong name, a half laugh, a quick correction, and no one minded. The smile spread along the table in ripples. I let my eyes wander down the line of shoulders angled in, watched them lean and nod, catching bits of his words. Laughter warm and low. My own breath paused, caught against the back of my throat before leaving quiet. I let my spine ease into the chair, shoulder pulling back from the edge, the movement enough to make the light miss my face. My hand fell to the napkin, smoothing it with slow strokes, creasing it sharper than before. The room didn't hush for me. The camera swung to catch another moment, a new pose, heads tilted in close, and I turned just enough that I was outside the frame, caught only at the edge, half crop. In the far wall's glass I caught it all again, a blur and a shine. Owen's shape firm, crisp in the reflection, while mine lagged a beat behind, softer, smudged. My mouth tried to form something, the start of a word maybe, but the sound died before the breath caught it. Andiaxtia floated in my head, then fell silent, no weight behind it. No one waiting to hear how it would end. They moved around me with quiet efficiency. Plates balanced on forearms, folded napkins laid down in lines too precise to notice the breath in between. One server paused, not hurried, not forced, eyes landing on mine, just a moment longer than necessary. No nod, no smile. Only that pause like an unspoken sentence. And then the glass was set before me, its base catching a glow from the candle, placed straight, unshaken. I watched his hands shift the edge of my plate just so, fingers brushing the linen to smooth it. The sound small, soft, swallowed by the laughter that rose at the other end of the table. They called out, "Kohi!" There, impersonal, clipped, forgetting even to check if I turned, voices dropping away before I could answer. Another voice, lower, careful, called me Mama. No hesitation, just given and left there in the air like a folded napkin waiting to be taken. My fingers flexed against the stem of my glass, thumb tracing the slight ridge at its base, eyes dropping to watch the candlelight wobble across water lines on the table. The server moved on, without glancing back, but his chair scraped the floor lightly, a courtesy space left behind as he passed. I heard the family's conversation stretch on, a roll of easy laughter that didn't reach this end of the table. My name didn't carry there, or it did, wrong once, then dropped, leaving nothing but the sound of ice clinking in a drink. I turned just enough to see my own shape reflected in the cabinet glass behind Owen, a blur behind his clear silhouette. He gestured, told some quiet joke, and the camera of the room seemed to pan to him, bodies leaning in. I shifted back, letting the edge of the table press a line across my palms. Breath finding its way out slow, not heavy, just there. A small cough at my side from someone passing by. A polite wait before they stepped past. Fingers tapping the back of my chair once so lightly it didn't even move. My hand dropped to my lap. The napkin sat folded beside my empty plate, edge pressed clean, fabric still warm from my hand. I watched its seam catch the candlelight, the glow running along the stitch like something alive, then fading back into the pale. My eyes stayed there, unfocused, tracing that line without chasing it to an end. I walked slow along the edge of the room, shoes brushing the polished floor, the rug frayed in a corner where it always caught my heel before. The overhead light spilled in its old pattern across the table, pooling gold at the head where the chair sat drawn close. Angled just right, the arms worn smooth by familiar weight. My fingers found the back of it for a moment, drifted over the varnish, the small crack near the joint I used to hide with my thumb when I leaned in. Someone else sat there now, shoulders easy, back straight, the table set neat around them. A folded napkin at their left, glass filled 3/4, small smile waiting for conversation. Their hand traced the rim once, the way I used to when thinking, and they turned to answer a question before it was even asked. The room held the hush that follows expectation, the pause before laughter lands. Then they said the name clear, once, twice, like it belonged to the room, to the walls, to everyone listening. Applause scattered down the table in uneven claps, not forced, just settled in. I watched from where the shadow started, candlelight cut short against the corner of the sideboard. My glass sat there, half empty, rim smudged from where I had balanced it too long without drinking. I didn't step closer, just let my hand rest on the wood, palm flat, feeling the cold seep into my skin before I lifted it away. The chair creaked under the new weight when they shifted, leaning forward to pour wine for someone else. Motion practice, but not rehearsed. The kind you learn because it feels right. No one called my name. It didn't catch on anyone's tongue, or pause them mid-sentence. The laughter skipped me, found easy footing over the polished plates. My gaze drifted across the framed pictures on the wall, one at an angle that reflected the room back to itself. I caught the shape of the table there, the glow centered in the glass. My outline a smear at the edge. I let my breath out slow, shoulder rolling back without hurry, eyes lowering to the cloth where a crease had been pressed long ago and still held its line. I didn't sit. My fingers brushed the table edge one last time, lifting away like letting go of something without dropping it. I eased back half a step, the light leaving my face, falling instead on the new host who didn't need to claim anything to own it. The chair held them firm, the laugh around them warm, the candle casting its steady glow without wavering. My own shape stayed behind the line where the light ended, the room carrying on. I sat with my back easing straight, listening as the voice rose clear through the room, the mic catching every syllable, bouncing them off walls that seemed to lean in to hear. He listed it all, one careful point after another. Details I recognized in my hands, the hours I'd given shape to, but the name that left his lips was clean, unfamiliar, held no weight in my chest. The syllables didn't snag on me. They flew straight to the one bathed in light at the head of the table. Spotlight found them easy, slid over their shoulders, cast their face in soft, warm relief. They nodded once, twice, smile tucked polite, gracious. The applause came in slow ripples at first, then swelled steady, hands meeting in a rhythm no one bothered to break. Each clap felt measured, final, filling the air where any correction might have lived. I heard my breath in my ears for a second, felt my spine pull taller on its own, eyes catching the shine of the glass in front of me, holding still. Between shoulders in the first row, someone's eyes found mine. The flick of recognition too fast to be called safe. They paused, blinked, something tightening at the edge of their mouth before they looked down, joining the rest in flat palms against each other, nodding to the wrong name. The sound gathered around us like a tide, steady, unavoidable. I watched them press their lips thin, chest rise once with breath they held too long, then settle, quiet as if nothing had cracked at all. My fingers moved without rush, thumb tracing the seam of the napkin until it smoothed under pressure, folding an old crease back on itself. The stem of the glass stayed balanced between my other fingers, untouched, the dark of the drink lapping low but unmoved. My mouth pressed closed at the corners, the pull gentle, as if even that motion caused too much noise. I let my eyes drop to the pattern in the cloth, lines stitched in pale thread that caught a stray beam from the chandelier. Reflection muted through the bowl of the glass. Around me the applause softened, spread out thinner, like rain over distance on a tin roof. I didn't shift. The chair underneath me stayed still. The light bent carefully around my shoulders, leaving the face at the far end in gold, while mine fell to the shade between candles. I stood slowly, chair legs scuffing quiet against the floor, no one pausing mid-sentence, no glance following. My hands rested at my sides a moment, fingers brushing the hem of my jacket before letting it hang loose. The hallway opened in front of me, light from inside bleeding onto the threshold, gold that faded into a cooler dusk. I took one step, then another, the rug shifting underfoot without protest, breath moving even, unhurried, leaving my chest softer with each exhale. Past the door, the air met me colder, brushing hair at my temple, laying it flat against my cheek before letting go. The laughter behind thickened, muffled by walls that swallowed words whole. I paused near the window, glass clouded just enough to smear reflections. Inside, they sat clustered, leaning toward each other, faces lit warm, the sound of glasses meeting crisp. My own shape hovered at the edge of the pane, a pale cut of shoulder and neck blurred against their movement. I let my eyes trace the frame of the door, its paint chipped where my palm once pressed steady. No imprint now. No space left for a question to be asked. None offered. My hand found the rail of the balcony, fingers curling once around the cool metal, then loosening, leaving only heat behind. Wind tugged at the hem of my coat, folding fabric against my legs in slow waves. Quiet enough that I could hear my breath gathering, leaving, gathering again. I didn't look back in through the glass long, just enough to see them lean closer, heads tipped, mouths forming words that didn't cross to me. The sound dulled, like rain in another room, steady, expected. My shoulders dropped half an inch, the last tension spent not in speech but in silence, letting the air sit heavy on my collarbones. One hand fell to my side, brushing the cloth of my pants, thumb grazing the seam where it met the pocket, the other settling against the wooden rail before sliding free. My feet planted even on the boards, weight shared without protest, chest rising once more, then emptying slow. The light inside stayed golden, reaching out in a line that broke just before my shoes, leaving the rest in gray. My breath left one last time, hanging as pale mist before thinning away. I was standing near the window, hands resting at my sides, watching the room ripple with sound that didn't need me. My gaze drifted over the rim of my glass to the edge of the table, where a fold in the cloth caught the light and held it. A server moved quietly, not hurried, steps measured on the old wood floor. He wasn't watching anyone else. He set a glass down with a soft clink, adjusted a stray napkin without fuss, then glanced up. His eyes met mine and held, unforced. He shifted, breath showing in the cool light from the hall, voice dropping so it wouldn't carry. "Miss Elsie," he said, careful but sure, the old name finding shape without apology. "You always liked it folded like this, remember?" I felt the word catch somewhere behind my ribs. My eyelids dropped, blinked once, slower than normal. My mouth held shut, edges pulling in just enough to make no sound. I didn't answer. Couldn't have. My fingers twitched against my thigh, barely brushing fabric before settling again. He didn't wait for anything back. Just adjusted the napkin a last time, turned away. leaving the space between us quiet. I watched the napkin hold its crease, felt my breathing thicken, slow. The hush around us heavy like the air before thunder. Light from the side lamp caught the line of the cloth, throwing a thin glow that ran under my hand, showing every vein in the skin for a moment. My eyes lifted to the glass in front of me, seeing its curve catch the reflection of his back walking away. My gaze followed, then fell to the table again, finding the line he'd pressed true. My fingers hovered over it, pressing down once, the fabric folding obedient beneath the weight. I didn't speak, didn't move, just let the wind through the cracked window edge brush the hair at my temple, let it settle there. Breath filled me, shallow even, holding before leaving slow. Light from the corner shifted, edging across my face, warm but diffused, finding my eyes open and still, not blank anymore, but holding something. A shape returning. I pushed the chair back slowly, the legs dragging just enough to hush the table. No one moved to stop me. A few eyes lifted then dropped, caught halfway between greeting and retreat. The space opened, not forced, but granted, like the floor had learned how to shift without protest. My hand found the napkin at my place, folded tight from fingers that had pressed it too hard. I set it down slow, edge aligned with the plate, smoothing it once before letting it be. The glass beside it stayed full, rim catching a curl, warm light, the liquid still. I didn't take it with me. Someone cleared their throat, quiet, softer than they'd used all night. A name tried to form on lips but fell silent before leaving. The hush felt different now, not sharp but careful. Eyes flicked away when I glanced back, some to the table, some to their hands. One person met my gaze long enough to hold it, then turned with a blink that was too slow to be normal. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. My steps were even, weight measured on the old floorboards. A hand brushed the back of a chair, fingers releasing it without grip. The breeze from the open door caught my hair at the temple, pushing it across my cheek and leaving it there. I paused at the edge of the room, looking through them without searching. No claim staked, no apology offered. Just standing. The sound of laughter from the other end of the table thinned, like someone had remembered they were too loud and turned it down without knowing why. I let my eyes lower to the table one last time. The napkin sat folded just so, the glass full, untouched, catching every bit of gold the light had to give. I felt my fingers open, leaving nothing behind, no mark. I shifted, letting the weight settle, shoulders dropping loose, and then I turned. The hall ahead was dim, softer than the dining room glow, light pooling under doors, bending around corners. My shadow fell behind me, longer than I felt. I heard someone exhale across the room, slow and quiet, not my breath this time. I didn't ask them to see me. They did.